What if World War II never really ended? While the world celebrated VE Day in May 1945, Winston Churchill was secretly planning the unthinkable. He ordered his generals to draft a plan for a surprise attack against our supposed ally, the Soviet Union. This wasn't some minor border skirmish. It was a full-scale invasion plan, codenamed Operation Unthinkable. The goal: to liberate Poland and forcibly push the Soviet Red Army back from Eastern Europe. Churchill feared Stalin would simply replace one tyranny with another, and he was ready to start World War III to stop it. The date for this shocking new war was set for July 1st, 1945. Imagine that. The celebrations for the end of the war in Europe would have barely finished before British, American and other Allied troops were ordered to turn their guns on the Soviets. The battleground would have been the very heart of defeated Germany, transforming it from a zone of occupation into the epicenter of a new global conflict. The fragile peace would have shattered, and the world would have been plunged right back into the abyss of total war. On the ground, the situation looked grim for the Allies. The Soviet Red Army was a terrifying force, a true steamroller. They outnumbered the combined Allied ground troops by a staggering 4-1. And it wasn't just about numbers. They possessed nearly 20,000 tanks, including the legendary T-34-85, arguably the best medium tank of the entire war. In a conventional land battle, the Soviets would have been an unstoppable juggernaut, capable of sweeping across Europe with frightening speed. Allied planners knew a head-on fight was suicide. So, what was the Allied strategy? They had to play to their strengths: complete and total dominance of the air and sea. The plan was to unleash the might of the Allied air forces, particularly the American B-29 Superfortress bombers. Instead of fighting tank for tank, they would cut the head off the snake. The primary targets would have been the Soviet oil fields in the Caucasus region and the critical railway lines crisscrossing Eastern Europe. The logic was simple: no fuel, no oil, no war. The Soviet tank armies would grind to a halt, starved of the resources they needed to fight, making them vulnerable. Now, here's where the story takes an even more incredible turn. To bolster their outnumbered ground forces, Churchill's plan included a shocking proposal: rearming the enemy. The plan called for taking 100,000 surrendered German soldiers, re-equipping them with Allied weapons, and integrating them into the fight against the Soviet Union. Think about that for a moment. German troops, who just weeks before were fighting to the death against the Allies, would now be fighting alongside them. It's one of the most astonishing what-ifs of the 20th century. But there was another, even more terrifying wild card in play: the atomic bomb. The first successful nuclear test, the Trinity test, took place in July 1945, right around the time this hypothetical war would have kicked off. This presented the United States with a horrifying choice. In our timeline, the bombs were used on Japan to end the war in the Pacific. But in this alternate reality, would President Truman have used them against Japan? Or would he have unleashed nuclear fire on Soviet troop concentrations and cities to halt their advance across Europe? The fate of millions would hang on this single, terrifying decision. So, what would the final outcome have been? It's a chilling question, with two likely and drastically different answers. In one scenario, the Allied air power and, potentially, the use of nuclear weapons would have successfully crippled the Soviet war machine, forcing Stalin to retreat and creating a new Iron Curtain much further east. But in the other, darker scenario, if the A-bombs weren't used or weren't effective enough, The Red Army's sheer size and power could have overwhelmed the Allies. Soviet tanks might have rolled all the way to the Atlantic coast, placing all of continental Europe, from Berlin to Paris, under the control of the Soviet Union. It's a stark reminder of how close the world came to an even darker future. Thanks for watching Joseph's What If. Let me know in the comments which scenario you think is more likely. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into alternate history.